Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We're here with one of our Fodera family members and artist, Zeke Frink. Thank you for coming in today and taking the time.
All right, thanks for having me, man.
Of course, Zeke's gonna talk about kind of from the customer perspective, what the journey is with ordering a custom Fodera.
Sounds great.
All right.
I guess it all started for me back when I wanted to get a Fodera, which was back in 2007. I was discovering YouTube and broadening my musical horizons, all that good stuff. And
yeah,
I saw the first time that Stanley Clarke, Marcus Miller, and Victor Wooten played together. And this was before they made that album and all that good stuff. And I was discovering bass in that solo range, playing more melodies and that kind of thing.
Nice.
And I'd already heard about Stanley Clarke and Marcus Miller, and I knew about their gear and what they played. And you know, this third guy, I'm like, who's this really cool bass with the shape and the yin yang, and he's got this extra double thumbing thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what's that all about? And it really intrigued me. And of course, I'm a research guy, so I'm checking out what's available with his stuff and his website, and of course, Fodera's mentioned. And I'm like, oh, okay, I hadn't heard of these guys. It's a great sounding bass. And from then on, it sparked, you know, just a lot of research and playing other basses and figuring out what my sound was going to be. And it was a very thorough journey, and I'm still discovering things about it. It's like music, you know, it's a never-ending process.
That's it. Every day's a journey. So when you had the idea to get a Fodera, did you have something in mind, or did you just collaborate with the sales?
Well, I guess you could say it was a little bit of both.
Oh, yeah?
I guess to include in this story, I actually almost had the opportunity to get a Fodera before this one. And it didn't work out, and I'm actually glad it didn't, because that instrument had a lot of things that ultimately would not be a part of what I was looking for, as far as the home part of what I wanted to sound like. Great instrument. The only thing that kind of stuck was the top. It had a quilted maple top that I just loved how it looked. It was a pretty modern sounding bass, a little bit different tone color than what I ended up with. Basically, my general concept is to blend vintage and modern tones. I'm somewhere in the middle, and it kind of varies, but I was looking for kind of my home spot. Jazz basses have kind of been the thing I go back to. I like modern sounding stuff, but to me, jazz bass territory seems to fit a broad end of sound. I play a lot of different kinds of music, and I'm influenced by a lot of things. So to me, that was a good place to start. I was dissecting between 60s and 70s tone. Pickup spacing became a critical thing for me.
Absolutely.
For how the bass sounds.
Important.
Yeah. Of course, Jocko's a big influence, and I like that sound. So that pickup spacing, which I arrived with mine, drive that kind of perception. But then also, too, for having a 60s spacing and having it for both pickups for the slap tone, to me has an extra bit of mid-range, and it's grittier than the 70s. I like the 70s sound, but to me, in a band mix, when things are trying to fight for that sonic space, and you want the slap to sound punchy without being too thin, that 60s voice kind of cuts through a little better for me.
Sure.
And the idea was to take that voice and brighten it up and make it a little bit more aggressive. And a big influence on that was a great bass player named Brian Beller, who plays with Guthrie Govan and Steve Vai and all those guys.
Yeah. Mr. Amdur is his uncle, who was my history teacher.
Wow, that's a really cool
in 11th
connection.
grade. He actually introduced me to him. Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, so I remember I saw a clinic of him up personal, and I heard his tone. I'm like, okay, that's closer to what I'm hearing in my head. He's more on the rock and metal tip, which I like a lot too, but I just love that kind of sound. So with Fodera, we were designing this instrument, and initially I was gonna go with a mix between alder and ash to blend the 60s and 70s voices, but then I kind of realized I wanted more specific frequency points to hit in the wood tone. And I heard about Black Limba, and it was being used on basses here, and the way it was described in words was like, okay, the mid punch of mahogany, but that extra attack and bottom end of ash in the same tone wood. And then I read on Anthony Jackson's bass, the red oak gives that kind of more open, growly attack.
Totally.
So that was a big influence. And then when I came to the shop and we were planning the first visit, Dan, who's on the first Mondays with Mike episode, was very kind in letting me try out his bass.
Totally. Love that
which
bass.
had the closest thing to what I was looking for. It had a black lemon body and a maple board. It did have a maple neck. But I played that one and I was like, yeah, this is pretty much there. And I know with what I'm looking to modify, it's going to fit. Cool. So, yeah, shout out to Dan. I mean, I was just talking to him earlier and, you know, I'm very happy. Also, Phil brought in his personal Fodera that day too for me to check out and try, so that was super cool. But yeah, so really it just kind of depends on what you're looking for when you're ordering a Fodera, and if you have a certain thing in mind, you know, you guys are willing to help, and then having your influence in helps a lot too, just to kind of solidify things together.
We're your trusted ambassadors to building the perfect custom.
For sure.
So speaking of this amazing custom you had us built back a few years ago, let's hear about it.
All right.
Well,
yeah, I know. It's gorgeous, and I fell in love with it when I saw it. It's a black limba body with a red oak neck and a maple fingerboard.
Look at that bird's eye in there.
I know, right? Also the quilted maple top, which, you know, I just love that look. It looks like Ripley sand or water. I ordered the matching wood covers thinking it's gonna match the top. And, you know, I remember it wasn't mentioned how it was gonna be. I'm like, okay, cool. And I get it the first day I opened it, and I'm like, wait a minute, it's got the body wood in there. Like that extra level of detail that, you know, Fodera just does, and I mean, it's just gorgeous. Seymour Duncan dual coils in the 60 spacing for the outer coils. Got this custom preamp in it. I did change out the knobs, actually.
Customize it even more.
Yeah, I needed something a little bit bigger. I still kept the original ones in my case, but also I had it a hip shot to the low B.
There you go, dropping A-bombs
right
all night long.
Exactly.
What?
Which covers a lot of stuff for lower notes if I need it.
Yep.
So yeah, it's got a very broad range of tone. You can go from kind of a real standard kind of jazz-based tone that's active or passive with the switch, and there's that sound. It does the bridge Jocko thing super well.
Oh yeah.
Just roll down the treble a little bit. It actually is amazingly good at getting a good P-bass type of sound, despite it not being a split coil pickup. If I just boost some lows and palm mute, drop the tone down, it's pretty close without having that bass. And then these dual coils, man, gives you a whole nother range of tones where you can get a real spanky, modern kind of thing, like from some other basses that a lot of people like, that are real bright and kind of nasty in a good way. Or you can hit the EQ and scoop out some of the higher mids and get more of a Music Man kind of tone.
Right.
So very broad range. I can cover a lot of different styles with this one bass, and I can bring, you know, one to the studio, and it works out. So.
You got a gig, a Fodera can cover all your tonal needs.
I mean, plays like a dream. There isn't a dead note on it. We went through some extra custom features on it just for me as far as how it plays and feels. The neck is actually in between the standard profile and the thin and fast. It's somewhere in the middle. Vinny kind of looked at my hand and we kind of traced it on a piece of paper. And I was like, wow, that's really all the info you need? He goes, yeah, sure, it'll be fine. And I mean, I picked it up and it fits like a glove. Everything is super comfortable. We had the cutaway up here kind of scooped out a little more, just so when I go up here and bend up, you know, there's nothing in the way. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, it's settled in the past 3 years I've owned it now, and it just sounds better. It
only gets better with time.
Looks better too. The wood darkened up and just looks richer and everything about it. So I just need more Foderas. And my life will be complete. So
absolutely, we got you.
And also too, man, acoustically, you can tell it sounds great. You can really see how the instrument responds to you.
Yeah.
Even though it's an electric instrument. So I've been guilty of wearing people out with just how nerdy I can get. And you guys have been nothing but bring it on. So thank you. I really appreciate it. Shout out to Vinny and Joey and what they started. You know, I mean, this is something that is very special. And like I said, my quest for tone and sound has been very intense, and this has been a huge leap forward for me.
Well, thank you, Zeke, for coming in. We appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you. I really appreciate you too, man.
Thank you so much.
All right.